All right. Well, welcome everybody to the first of what we plan to be many, many Seek Safely Summits. I am Anne Peterson, and I'm the founder of Illuminate, the company that is hosting this event. And more importantly, I am this last year on my own journey of understanding a high control group that I was not only a part of, but a leader in my journey of unwinding the what I came to understand as exploitive and abusive behaviors in that organization, and sorting that out from the tremendous value that I got and all of those kind of questions that come up when we find out we're a part of something that's a little bit different than maybe what we thought. As I was going through that journey, I was blessed to be introduced to Ginny Brown and the Seek Safely organization in about, I think it was 2021 or so.
Mhm.
And literally from the moment that I was able to convince them I wasn't another crazy cult leader, I've been a deep fan and proponent and advocate for what Seek is about. As far as I can tell, the Seek Safely organization is the only organization and voice really that I've run across in the space, the whole self-development, and particularly the side that's looking at the dark side of personal development and wellness. What I appreciate about the folks at Seek Safely is that they appreciate that self-help and personal development and wellness has an important place in our society and understands that and honors that, despite having, some of the worst outcome possible happen to their family, to still understand and appreciate the value and be a demand, as it were, for a safer and more ethical space, putting in some of the guardrails. And so we'll, in a moment here, I'll introduce Ginny and we'll have Ginny kind of tell us about the mission of SAKE. But I just wanted to say why I'm hosting this today is because I appreciate the voice that is for the whole of the industry and about getting us a safer and more ethical self-development industry. Let's see. So this summit is a series of talks and discussions about what it looks like to guide the self-help community towards a more responsible future. That's what I mean by when I say safe and ethical. We will discuss some of the problems, we'll talk truth here, and some of the deconstruction and healing needs, which I liken to reconciliation and restitution. As I've gone through my own journey, I've seen how important that space is, and where those of us that have been impacted the most, we can see and can be the leaders in doing better, right? We've been deeply involved. Most of the people you'll hear from today have been deeply involved and impacted in the self-help industry in some way, shape, or form. And out of our experiences have grown commitments to educate, help heal, and literally, I hesitate to use the word, but it's right there from my training, transform the industry. So, all right. So with that, I want to introduce Ginny. So Ginny, a wife and mother of four, educator and therapist in private practice, serving individuals and families, addressing healthy family dynamics as her career. She and her husband, George, were devastated when their daughter, Kirby, died in a facsimile of a sweat lodge at a poorly run self-help retreat. They are both social workers, therapists, and educators, and would learn firsthand about the wild west of the personal development space, most especially the shocking lack of accountability for practitioners and guardrails for consumers. In an effort to honor their daughter, they started Seek Safely, a 501c3 nonprofit. Their mission, guiding the self-help community toward a responsible future, is quickly becoming a movement for the safe and ethical practice of the self-help and wellness industry. So Ginny, welcome. It's so good to see you this morning. Thank you for being with us today and just for everything you've done. Anything you want to say? I have a couple questions to kind of walk you through, but just anything you want to say in opening here to our folks that have gathered and our folks that are listening in the future.
Well, thank you so much, Anne, for putting this together for us. This is a dream come true for me. I tried to do a Seek Safely Summit, and I think it was 2014 and 2016, one in Sedona and one in San Diego, without a whole lot of success. The one in Sedona was okay, but I just felt after this happened to our family, Kirby's death, which was absolutely devastating to us. Um, Kirby was a real adventurer, so I wasn't surprised that she took some risks. But she was always very safe in her adventuring. So the fact that at this 5-day retreat, she lost her life, it was so baffling to us. How could that have happened? She's so conscious of keeping herself safe. She had tons of safety equipment for all her, sporting things that she did. She mountain biked, she climbed, she surfed, she was a horsewoman. So we couldn't understand that. And the more we learned about what had happened in the course of that week, we found so unbelievably upsetting and shocking. And we realized that her death and the death of Liz Newman and James Shore also needed to be honored by having something positive come out of these senseless deaths that never, ever should have happened. And that was really why we started this organization. George and I were in a better position than the other families to do something going forward. So we decided this is what we have to dedicate ourselves to at this particular point. So it's been 15 years. And
I was just going to say, how long ago was that? Yeah, so 15 years.
and it's been a long 15 years. And I think that's why I'm so excited about today, because we had always wanted to tell people this is bigger than our grief. I, always appreciated people understanding how devastating this was and providing condolence and support to us. That was beautiful. And we were surrounded by wonderful people. But I wanted to educate people to say, this is more than us. This is bigger. This is these kind of tactics that were used that day exist in this industry because it helps encourage people to spend more money, to stay connected, and trying to get people to be more suggestible is profitable. So
Ginny, would you say, just for those of us, those listening now and in the future that maybe don't know the story, just a very nutshell story of what happened to Kirby and then what happened to the perpetrator, to the leader or guru of that, as a follow, given, part of our thing is to create more accountability for practitioners, accountability structures.
So James Ray was a rising star in the self-help industry. He was featured on The Secret. He was on Oprah a number of times. He was on all the morning talk shows, and Kirby loved Oprah. Oprah's done a lot of great things in the world. She really has. But it never occurred to me that she, who has a staff, hadn't vetted this guy appropriately. Because when I heard him speak, it never occurred to me that you could lie to an audience of 300 people about your experience, your background, your education, your skills. And he did. And knowing that he had been kind of vetted by national media, that created trust that I had, that my husband and I had, that we knew that, okay, he's a little egocentric, this guy, and a lot about money, but he had a lot of good things to say. It never occurred to us that he was dangerous or that his own hubris would so corrupt him that he would be responsible for taking people's lives. So this was a 5-day retreat. It was very expensive. Kirby was pretty frugal. So I also knew going into this, I didn't know how much she had paid. But when I found out afterwards, I realized that's also why she stayed, because this was her investment in her future, and she wasn't going to walk out on that. For 5 days, there was all kinds of exercises that were really created to break a person down and then to kind of manipulate their thinking, so that by the end of 5 days, people's ability to be completely freely rational in their thought process was really interfered with. So the final event, after days of very little sleep, limited food, a 36-hour in the desert vision quest with no water and no food and alone, they come back to a sweat lodge, which was very big, way too crowded, way too hot, run improperly, and he was encouraging people to stay even when they were displaying the signs of heat stroke. He was telling them that the signs of heat stroke, he didn't call it that. He said, you feel like you're going to die. You feel like you might throw up, you might get dizzy, you might be disoriented. Don't worry. These are signs of success. These are signs that you're reaching your breakthrough and you're going to be great. So, soldier on. So at the end of the almost, it was 2.5 hours in this extremely hot environment, people were sick, they were convulsing. It was a disaster scene, and Kirby and James Shore were already dead, and Liz Newman survived for another 9 days in the hospital while all of her organs broke down. So to us, it was inconceivable that something like this could have happened. We didn't hear from him until 5 days later. We were informed of our daughter's death by a New York State trooper coming to our door. We live in New York. It took the grand jury a number of months before they found him culpable in any way, and the grand jury indicted him for manslaughter. The year of 2011 was his trial, and after being on trial from February to November, George and I had to go out to Arizona 5 times, leave work, lose income. It was just a horrendous year. And at the end, the judge apologized that he had to give him some jail time because of the distress that he had caused the victims. And he served 20 months in jail for these 3 deaths. And actually, the fact that the prosecutor was able to get any conviction was pretty much of a miracle. She had 2 people on her staff. Meanwhile, his lawyers had a huge group of people in LA that just kept cranking out mistrial judgments. So she spent all her time defending her right to prosecute. So it was a real David and Goliath kind of situation.
And what was he ultimately charged with?
He was ultimately charged with negligent homicide.
Okay.
And really, it should have been manslaughter because he knew that what he was doing was dangerous. People in the past had gotten sick, had to be revived, had gone unconscious, but a lot of that information was never brought before the jury.
Yeah.
And make one statement.
And I think this herein lies part of the Sikh activity and mission, yes, is to strengthen the law, to strengthen laws, to get some, when we say accountability structures, we can see from Kirby's story that there's the severe lack for even the most outrageous, worst of outcomes, that they would have to work that hard to even say, no, that's wrong. Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Ginny. And then so then can you tell us just a little bit about how, as your family's moving through these spaces, which by the way, I'll put a link in the chat here and we'll make sure it's in the follow-up. There's Ginny and her daughter, Jean, who's here with us, also wrote an absolutely fabulous book that tells the story, but it also tells, it's a very beautiful piece about grief and what it's like to really walk through grief. And I would say in a very healthy way. It's just wonderful, wonderful book. I highly recommend everybody get and read. And but then that led, as you guys were healing and recovering, can you tell us a little bit about the formulation? How did you come upon the idea of Seek Safely as an organization? And what are, in your words, what is the organization for?
It started really as an outcome of the fact that the whole week after Kirby's death, and as we awaited for her body to be returned from Arizona, so that took almost 9 days. Every night, my husband would gather us all in the living room to process what we were feeling and what we had heard and what we did that day. We continued to have a processing call with our family and some close friends for a good year. And out of those discussions came, we have to do something. What can we do? We have to do something. We can't let this horrible, egregious situation go without any kind of response to address it. And it's not about retribution, it's about change. I wanted people to understand that seeking is a great thing. I've always been a seeker, okay? But you have to have both the open heart and open eyes. You have to pay attention to things that could potentially be dangerous. And honestly, I have to say, I didn't pay enough attention to things that were dangerous when I heard James Ray speak. So we wanted to educate people, and then we felt we needed to help people who were seeking to be really discerning about what they wanted and self-protective. And we're also looking at an industry that I felt like had been corrupted. And because there were great teachers out there, but there's also charlatans. There's also people that are really out mainly for the money. So we wanted to do what we could to see if we could impact the industry in some way to make it more safe and more ethical. So we started the process of legislation in New York State. At this point, the bill that we've been working on since 2016 has finally passed in the Senate, is yet to pass in the Assembly and come before the whole legislature. So, you know, we're hoping this year or next year that might happen.
Yeah, that's been a big piece of the initiative. And just to adding somebody in one of our guests asked a question that kind of goes in here, which is, so James Arthur Ray did go on trial, did apparently, much to the chagrin of the judge, be ordered to serve some jail time, which he then served. And just curious, is he out now? I mean, he's out now, and is he continuing to try to be a self-help practitioner?
Yes, he is. In 2016, correct me if I'm wrong, Gina, it was CNN that did the documentary called Enlighten Us, about James Ray being in prison and coming out. And what he then started to do was he started to spin this story about what had happened to him, that because other people didn't take responsibility for their own behavior, he suffered the loss of his business and did jail time. And now he's going to teach people how to overcome adversity, because this never should have happened to him. And so he took the story, started spinning it, because he didn't have a license that could be taken away from him, which is really the point. If I did something unethical with my clients, I would be censured and my license would be taken away. But if you don't have a license, if you don't have credentials, there's nothing that really can be done. So,
and that ties in beautifully. Can you give us a little sense of that legislation? What is it? What is that? What's it about? What's that look like?
The legislation is trying to create some definition of self-help and personal enlightenment, so that people in the legislatures can understand that this is a potential area of danger for people. We're very concerned about consumer protection, so let's take a look at this. So in the legislation, there's also mention of coercive control. The fact that if people are willing to take a risk, the risk has to be clearly specified, and the practitioner has to let the client know what you're doing to mitigate that risk. So you're willing to take a risk, but I want to let you know that I'm going to work really hard to make sure that you're not hurt. And if anything happens, I have these things in place to protect you and make sure you're going to be okay. So that, that was completely missing. When they did the sweat lodge, they weren't even within cell range to call for help.
Right, right. Yeah, we'll dive a little bit deeper into this later when Chris and I are talking about safe practitionering. But it's one of the things I learned from honestly, Jean in the Seek Safely podcast. If you're going, when you go to run the Boston Marathon, yes, you sign a release, but they also have ambulances, first aid kit, they have safety things in place. And as somebody who produces events, we always have a safety plan. And I thought everybody did that. I was like, what? Everybody doesn't make sure they have a plan for if something goes wrong. Everything from somebody gets a physical injury, such as a cut, to even an emotional injury or psychological injury. What are you going to do in that case? And turns out that many, many practitioners do not necessarily have those mechanisms in place. So that's really awesome. Somebody also asked the question, wanted to know, did at any point with your family, did James Arthur Ray show remorse in a way that you felt was real?
Well, I what he said was he felt he was so sorry this had happened, which wasn't really, from our point of view, taking responsibility for the fact that he caused it to happen. And
I'll pipe in on that too. That was a few days after when he first called us. His words were, he was sorry that this had happened to him.
It was the worst thing in his life.
Yeah.
And but he wanted me to know that Kirby was in a really good place before she died. And I said, well, too bad that place was with you. The whole thing, I think, that made me realize how wrong this was not even being informed on Thursday night that this had happened at his event at 4:30 or 5 in the afternoon. We didn't find out about her death until troopers had to track us down and come to our home at 8 o'clock the next morning. That right away, I was like, what the heck? That's crazy. And then we never heard from them. They didn't do anything to protect her body, get her things home, get her home. Nothing.
Yeah. I had something similar actually happen with a Dispenza thing. A dear friend of mine went down and ended up in the hospital on the first day, and it took me 3 days. And I'm savvy. I produce events. I know the hotel, all that. It took me 3 days to get somebody from the group on the phone to get her possessions from the hotel to the hospital. And it took me yelling at them saying, I produce events. I'm going to hold you liable for this if you do not get somebody over there to be at least checking in on her and taking care of her, getting her stuff and things. It's really quite.
He fled the scene. He wasn't cooperating with the police. He told me he was cooperating, but we had been in touch with the police, so we knew he wasn't. So all of these were also signs of like, oh my goodness, what happened here? This is crazy. This is wrong. And we just couldn't let the death of this amazing woman not be like something that was being shouted out to the world.
Wow. Thank you. Just two other questions, and then we'll move on to the next segment, which is featuring your brilliant daughter, Ginny Brown. What would you say have been the biggest challenges? So you started the Seek organization, out of this terrible incident, and a commitment to educate and create, better in the world and in the industry. What have been the biggest challenges along the way for you?
Well, initially, we wanted to help the people who were at Sedona because we knew they had been through a horrible trauma, and very few people wanted to speak to us. That was very upsetting. And then the next thing was when we started to put together information to educate people, we just couldn't find anyone who was really interested. People wanted to know our story. They wanted to see George and me cry. They wanted hysteria, you know, on the media, but they didn't want to look at the problem. They didn't want to look at why this had happened. They just wanted to look at the sensationalism of it. And I found that very upsetting. You know, come on, can we like tear this apart and figure out why this happened, make sure it doesn't happen again? This is not just about us. This is about other people are still in danger. If they're not losing their life, some of them are losing their lifetime savings, or they're having really difficult mental health challenges as a result of believing someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. It doesn't have a mental health background, but is dispensing mental health information. So the fact that we couldn't generate interest was difficult. And as a result of that, I said yes to every single interview. Every interview that I was asked to do, I said yes to, whether it involved travel or not, I said yes to it. And many of them never aired. And, you know, I just learned, well, you know, you do what you can and hopefully it'll make a difference. But that was exhausting and hard. And it's been hard to see it go as slowly. Like I said to you, I wanted to do a summit that had people show up 10 years ago, but
Yeah.
no one was really, no one thought it was necessary.
Right. Right.
I can add to that as well. I think looking back, part of the problem was that nobody got it. You know, we would tell other people, we would talk to even practitioners in the industry. Nobody got what had really happened. It just seemed like a crazy kind of an accident. Yeah, definitely some negligence. Wow, this guy is terrible. But now I think collectively, like in society, we all have a lot more understanding of that idea of coercive control. But at that time in 2009 and for many years after, nobody got it, including the legal system just couldn't really get their heads around what had really happened, why people's deaths in this situation were the result, not just of being in a fake sweat lodge for a few hours, but it was 5 days of, you know, kind of breaking people down so that at the point when they were in danger, they weren't able to make rational decisions. And that's the thing that we saw echoed throughout the self-help industry. But yeah, nobody was really ready to understand or hear that message. And that has changed, which is hopeful. I tell my mom that a lot because it has been frustrating, but it's changing.
Well, it's great and you know, later on today, y'all are going to be on a panel with Sarah and Nippy, who were two of the key whistleblowers on the Nexium thing. And I feel like that when that happened and that got so much media, and a turning started to happen where we started to see it in a much bigger way, that the dangers aren't just limited to this person or that leader or whatnot, but that there is a dark side to enlightenment, as it were. Mm-hmm. And we want to look at that honestly and look, what can we do to mitigate that and to be responsible for that as well. So what do you see? So I'm curious, and Ginny or Jean, either want to answer this, but what do you see, like, what's your dream come true? What do you see as the, you know, future? What would you like? So in 10 years from now, when we're meeting, we'll meet in person and we'll have a fun weekend together with lots of classes and seekers and whatnot. And we're looking back and we go, okay, what's been accomplished? You know, kind of like that. What would you most like to see happen out of the efforts of Seek Safely?
I would like to see that people read information on the site or heard the podcast or read our book or used the tool that Jean is going to share today and were able to say to us, this really helped me. This helped me to make a different decision. It really helped me to vet the person more carefully. It helped me to pay better attention to what was happening in my personal development journey so that I didn't get taken advantage of, and I kept my own agency and I kept my own self. I wasn't convinced to give up who I was in order to change. I learned that I could be me and be a better me by learning some things. But I didn't have to give my mind, my soul to some person who was going to tell me truths that I never knew before. That's to me would be success. And I always thought, like the end game for me would be writing the book and legislation. And we wrote the book, and I don't know how many people have bought the book, Jean, like 1,000, maybe, something like that.
About that.
Which is great. And I know that it has had an impact and it has had help, but, getting some feedback about how it's helped is also something that helps you to measure impact. But I also know that in life, you do the right thing. You just do what you know you have to do. And if you hear about how you've helped people, great. If you don't, that's okay too. But I just want to make a difference. I want her death to save lives. I want her death to make a difference. And I want people to know who she was.
Wow. Thank you. Well, I can tell you that difference is already being made, and continues to be. Anything, Jean or Glenn, you would like to add? Jean is Ginny's daughter, and Glenn is the board president of Seek Safely. So I just want to give you a moment to say anything in here if you'd like to add to that, what you see as the accomplishment. What are you out to accomplish? What's that future look like?
I have lots of thoughts, as I always do whenever we talk about Seek Safely and James Arthur Ray and self-help. First of all, thank you so much, everybody who bought a ticket and who showed up here this morning. Like we always knew at Seek Safely, we always knew that the industry it was never going to be the regulators or the government. Like no cop was going to come in and clean up the self-help industry. It was always going to be from the bottom up, from folks who are really invested in the industry and the ecosystem. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Anne, and everybody on the call for helping organize this and for contributing your time and your talent. We love you. We love you. A lot of folks here have kind of heard my story, kind of the idea that the fact that I've been heavily invested in this self-help ecosystem since I was a teenager literally saved my life. Like self-help has really played a huge part. By the way, I'm Dr. Glenn Patrick Doyle. I'm kind of known out there for my content on complex trauma, but I've been involved with Seek Safely since I think 2016 or 17. I mean, this is a real passion project for me because, again, I wouldn't be here if not for the self-help ecosystem of books and products and services and personalities. And when I came along and Seek Safely's journey, for years it had kind of been an effort really concentrated in the Brown family and kind of a response, as Ginny's explained, kind of a response to this awful, awful thing that happened. And one of the things that we've worked hard as an org to since I got involved has been to bring folks in who are invested in the self-help ecosystem, who are not directly touched by this tragedy, but who have skin in the game in terms of this industry and to whom the self-help ecosystem has really meant something. Like I always say that we're self-help people, right? Like, Anne, you're a self-help person. Like everybody on this call, I think, in some way, shape, or form, the exception of maybe Jean, whoever when I say the self-help industry, but we're all self-help people. Like we start out from this position of like, maybe. Let's think about the possibilities, right? We get excited about possibilities. And so we care about the quality and the safety of the content that is produced in this billion-dollar industry every single year. I come at it from the perspective of this, that, look, what happened in Sedona was a god-awful tragedy. What happened to the folks who were victimized by NXIVM was a tragedy. There are ways that people are victimized every day that's awful, awful. I kind of take a step back from that, however, and I think, boy, James Arthur Ray was problematic way before Sedona, and NXIVM was problematic way before DOS. I'm someone who really, really cares as much as I care about those tragedies, I'm someone who also really, really cares about the quality and safety of, you know, the materials and the personalities that are out here in this ecosystem. So when we think about like our best case scenario, you know, Anne, you asked like, what's our dream come true?
Right.
My dream come true is not that these things will never happen. I mean, terrible, terrible things will happen. This is life. Terrible things will happen. My dream come true is, man, those of us who are really invested in this ecosystem and who love these products and who read these books and who buy these courses, that we all have a framework to kind of think about our journey that really enhances our journey. Like I've always said, man, it is a losing message to go like, slow down, tap the brake, right? No one wants to do that because no one thinks they got the problematic self-help guy. Like everybody thinks I got the good one, right? Like, oh yeah, there are predators out there and there are terrible guys out there. I've got the good ones. So I don't really have to think about that. What I would really love is for all of us seekers, and I say us seekers, because I'm still on my journey, right? All of us seekers to have tools and to have kind of a roadmap that we thoroughly understand that will enhance our journey. Like it's not just about avoiding the bad. It is about avoiding the bad stuff, but it's really about making this journey better and more effective for us and for the people that we touch. So again, that's as usual when you ask me a question, that's a long answer to a short question. But
Beautiful though.
it's great to see everybody's smiling faces and thank you so much for being here. And I can't wait to talk at you a lot more after lunch.
Thank you. Thanks, Glenn. Jean, any words here that you'd like to?
Yeah, I'll try to sum it up in a simple way. My hope for the future, 10 years from now, is that the idea of seeking and seekers are respected for seeking being the amazing thing that it is. One of the reasons I think that my family felt compelled to start this organization was that what we saw was a situation in which some of Kirby's best qualities were used against her. She was highly motivated. She was never going to give up. She was always going to push herself. And these are qualities that we see many seekers have. And those are amazing, beautiful qualities. So the idea that those things can be turned against somebody in such a way that they are harmed is just awful. And that's part of what really drove us forward. We want to honor the fact that pushing yourself, to improve your life, to get the best out of your experience in this world, that's an amazing thing. And for a long time, self-help has been kind of the butt end of a joke. Even, you know, cults have been sort of like a weird thing. But I mean, all of this comes from a place that is very natural and very human. And so my hope for the future is that that can be respected both by the seekers themselves, so they can feel proud of the actions that they're taking. It's respected by the self-help providers so that they will act more responsibly and more ethically. And it's respected by society at large so that when we see somebody being taken advantage of, we feel compelled to take action.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, thank you not just for what you said, but for everything that you and your family have done and the conversation that the Seek Safely organization is spearheading. When I first met Ginny and she was telling me about kind of being ready to move beyond and bigger and wanting, there's a message that's much bigger than the tragic death of Kirby. And I said, oh, you're starting a movement. Let's start a movement. And by that, I mean a movement, a demand, a consumer demand, a practitioner demand in the marketplace for a safer and more ethical industry. And then the tools to do that. What does that really look like? So that's what we'll be talking about throughout the day. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're going to actually wrap this particular session and move into our next session. So if you'll just hold with us for a moment, and we will open the next session, which is introducing the new Seek Safely Empowerment Compass, which is a really great tool for consumers, and we're all consumers, even if we're a practitioner or, you know, in a way, we first and foremost are consumers. And so really incredible tool for how we can relate to our own journey and some things we can put in. So we'll look forward to seeing you in just a few moments in that session. Thank you.